Today on Reese Dixon, I am making a mosaic medicine box. Hi everybody, it's Teresa with ReeseDixon.com. I'm still working on my master bedroom makeover, and one thing that has always bothered me is the fact that since I am always sick, I always have prescription bottles next to my bed, which looks horrible in photos and when I'm doing videos in there, when I have this beautifully designed bedroom and then all these little orange pill canisters. Not only is it a total bummer, but it doesn't look good. So I wanted some way to hide those pill bottles so that it could still be pretty. And so I'm making this special pill bottle box. This is started as a box I got at Target in the clearance section. It cost me $3 and it was just raw wood, and this was a piece of blue plastic. So I spray painted it. I did a coat of primer and then a coat of glossy spray paint. And so now to make it special, I'm going to put a mosaic inside this handy little inset tile piece. You can do a mosaic on just about anything. It doesn't even have to have the little frame built in for you, but this sure makes it convenient. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. So you'll need some tile adhesive, and then you'll need some grout. Now, well, of course you'll need your tiles as well. These are the tiles that I'm going to be using, and they come on this little mesh backing so that they're already spaced properly for you, and they're basically ready to apply and grout if you were going to use it just like this. But since I'm doing this different sized space, I'm going to cut these apart. And so because I'm going to make the spaces really, really tiny, I want to get as much of the tile in this space as possible. I'm going to be using what's called non-sanded grout. There's grout that has sand in it, and there's grout without sand. If you watched my how to make a chalkboard wall tutorial, this is the same stuff we used for that. But basically the sand is good for when you've got a larger space for your grout lines. Since I'm going with really tiny grout lines, I'm going to be using this non-sanded type. But we'll get to that. So the first thing we have to do is glue our tiles down. So that's where I've got this tile adhesive here. Okay, and all you have to do is take a little putty knife and spread this right down. You want just like a really thin coat when you're working in tiles this small. If you've got bigger tiles, you'll need to make it super strong to carry that weight. So you might need to do a little bit thicker of a coat, but for how little our pieces are, we can get away with almost nothing. So I'm just gonna spread this whole thing around like it's cake batter, like I'm frosting a cake, and get a nice thin but consistent coat all the way around. Okay, there we go. So if you get glue on the sides like I did, while this is wet, it cleans up really easily with a little water. But you just want to make sure that you get that before it dries, because once it dries, it's there forever. Okay, so with my glue in place, now I can start placing my tiles. Something to keep into consideration whenever you're making a mosaic is even spacing. That's one area where these mesh pieces come in really handy, because it's already factory measured for you. Since I'm not going to worry about that, I'm going to have to eyeball it so that I can get my pieces as close as I can while still keeping it even across the space that I have to work in. Okay, so I'm just going to start placing these, and what I'm going to do first is the four corners. I'll stick those in there. Oops, and then once I get the four corners done, I'll start working across the edges. So this will let me see exactly how much space I have to work with to make it even as I fill this in. And once you get the edges kind of determining your spacing, Then it's just a matter of continuing it as you fill in the whole piece. Okay, after a little adjusting, I've got all of the mosaic tiles in place. Now, before it dries, like I mentioned, I'm going to want to clean up all of this glue here on the side. Anything that's not the way I want it to look, I got to clean it up before it gets to dry. And then I'm going to leave this to dry from 24 hours to even as much as 72. You want the glue to get really hard before you layer on the grout. So I'm just going to set this in a cool place in my office and get back to it in a few days. My mosaic has had overnight to dry. Well, more than overnight, the full 24 hours that it's recommended. And now I'm ready to start with my grout. I've got a couple of sponges here, one that's dry and one that's wet. And then I mixed up my grout. So I just added the non-standard grout to water. And then I have, this is called a float. And so I'm just going to take my grout, and I mixed mine up. It's still a little thick. You want it, well, I guess that's okay. That's about right. So this is just mixed up with water and then stirred. And so you want it to be like frosting so that you can spread it easily. So I'm just going to put this right on top and use this float to get it all the way down into those crevices. Like that. And you don't want to get too ahead of yourself. You only want to work with what you can get in place before it dries. And this will set up pretty quickly. So you don't want to, just dump the whole thing on here. You want to just work a little bit at a time, making sure to get it way down into those cracks and as much as you can off of the tile, but we'll clean that up once we get this all in place. Once I got my grout in place, I gave it a few minutes to set up, and now I can come back and start the cleaning process. While the grout was wet though, I did take my finger and just kind of run it right up against that edge there. Since the tile's taller than my frame, I want a clean edge, so I needed to grout it, but I also need to come up with a way of containing it. So I just, like if you've ever used caulk in a bathroom caulk, then you can do it the same way. You just rub your finger right across it and that creates a nice smooth line. So with my wet sponge, I'm kind of going over each little tile, especially some of these that are textured where the grout got stuck. I'm just kind of cleaning that up a little, but you'll never be able to get it completely clean without getting some of the, like re-moistening some of the grout that's supposed to be in the grout lines and wiping that all over your tile. So you can make yourself a little bit crazy trying to get this perfectly clean with a wet sponge. So the thing to do is clean up the bulk of what you can, the really messy parts, with a wet sponge, and then give it a few more minutes to kind of dry again. And that's when you come back with your dry sponge. You just kind of rub this over the top to give it kind of a buffing. And that will get rid of any of that last little bit of dust from the grout. And then you just let this sit for at least overnight, and then it will cure up and you're done. I had some leftover tiles and I thought they were so pretty, I didn't want them to go to waste. So I've just kind of glued them loose on the front of my box. Since they're just kind of decorative like this, you don't have to worry about grout or special glue or anything like that. I just used some super strong super glue type that would be able to hold the weight of it. But then I can just, oh, maybe it wasn't strong enough. Maybe I need some extra stronger glue to hold the weight of it. And then I can just leave it there since it's not strictly a mosaic, it's just for decorative. So I'm gonna clean this up, let it dry, and I'll show you the finished product tomorrow morning. So here's my mosaic now that it's had overnight to dry, and rubbing it with that dry sponge makes all the difference. It makes it look like actually clean and polished instead of a homemade project. I ended up not using the tiles on the side because the glue just turned out to not be strong enough all by itself, which is why we basically went to all this trouble with the mosaic. So I took those off and now I'm done, and this is ready to hide all of my unattractive medicines that I don't want cluttering up my bedside table, now they can fit in this pretty little Mosaic box, and I can just have the nice little look that I want without all the reality of life getting in my pictures. So I hope that this was inspiring to you, to show you that mosaics are simple and you can do all of these techniques. Leave me a comment if you have any questions. Be sure and subscribe to the channel so that you can see all my big projects for my master bedroom makeover, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.